Hey, profs. Welcome on in. My name's Rob Lightfoot, proud two-time alum of Rick Edelman College of Communication, class of 2000-2001. This is Beyond the Brown and Gold.
I'm Jessica Kennedy. I'm the co-host here, also a two-time proud Rowan alum, class of 2008 from the Rick Edelman College of Communication and Creative Arts, and 2015 from the College of Education. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Rowan Radio 89.7 WGLS FM presents Beyond the Brown and Gold, a show that highlights the lives and memories of Glassboro State and Rowan University alumni. Now, here are your hosts, Rob Lightfoot and Jessica Kennedy.
Rob, we have a very special guest on today's show with a unique story, nothing like any of the alumni stories we've heard before.
I think that's absolutely apropos to say.
Yes, yeah, that's safe to say. So we had alum Jason Dennen, 98 graduate with a BS in business administration. And while that is wonderful, his experience at Rowan, why are you laughing at me?
No, because it was wonderful.
It is wonderful.
I know, but it deals with nothing of his story.
Yeah, it really doesn't have to do too much with what we talked to Jason about. Jason is an author. He authored the book 8 Days Till Sunrise, and it's about a traumatic experience that he had adventuring.
No, and I got to say that you have to see both of our faces, really. And if this were a visual medium, we're both there. Like, there was a stretch there where we didn't say a word.
No, because I was just so engaged in the story.
Yeah, because the accident that he had, and then the recovery, and then just hearing how motivated he stayed during that piece, it was wild. So I think it's a great listen.
It is a great listen.
Motivating, I would say, as well.
Yeah, I feel like I kind of just want to go there and like meet with him. You know what I mean? Like this was a virtual interview for us. It's always great to have alums in studio, but sometimes he's coming to us all the way from Colorado, which you'll hear as soon as we jump into the recording. But you just kind of want to meet him because you feel like there's, something about him that's really inspiring.
And it's more than just his physical recovery. So it's his physical and the mental recovery that he experienced. So
absolutely.
It's a great listen.
So Jason, off air, before we started the actual recording, we talked a lot about where you're coming to us from today. So tell us where you're coming to us from, and also what the state flower is, because I did.
This is great.
I love this. I did quiz him
to
check his levels to see how we could hear him, and he does know the state flower, which I think is great.
And honestly, he could lie and tell us this.
Yeah, we're gonna have to Google fact check this afterwards. Right. Jason, where are you coming in from?
Today I'm in Denver, so I'm in my office, but I live in Boulder, Colorado, which is about 25 miles away from downtown Denver. And Columbine is the state flower, and you can double check that. I'm right about that.
Take us back to your time before you got to Rowan. Take us back to your pre-Colorado days. Where did you grow up, and how did you find your way to Rowan University?
Sure. So I grew up in Monroe, and of course for our Jersey folks, 8A on the Turnpike, because there's more than one Monroe, of course. About 40 miles from New York City. Grew up there, lived pretty much my whole life there, up until coming to Rowan. My parents are actually both graduates of Rowan as well. I think they're class of 69. So yeah, back when that was mostly a school of education, they're both teachers. They're retired now. So yeah, they went there. So that's how I knew about, Glassboro. Was Glassboro State then, became Rowan, I guess 2 years before I got there. So played a little football there, but grew up in Monroe and came down to South Jersey for college. So yeah, first knew about it through my parents and all their stories.
And with having two parents that were educators, was there any inkling that you wanted to get into education?
No, they told me that I shouldn't go into education. Not that they didn't love being teachers, but they did say, yeah, maybe education's odd. Like, they go in the business world. Yeah, they didn't necessarily push me towards education. They didn't like that I went to Rowan though.
Yeah. So how did you know of Rowan? Did you visit a lot? Did you just hear through stories, or there's that sweet mix of, kind of wanting to go where your parents go and kind of not wanting to go where your parents went? So what did that look like for you? My parents, I don't ever remember coming to the campus before actually doing the campus tour. But, you would get the stories of, this is where we met. This is, sophomore year, we're at this dorm, and this is how our relationship developed, and they got married their senior year. So I heard the stories about the college, but yeah, I hadn't been down there. They always said nice things about it, nice campus. They love
the 4 years that they stayed there. So yeah, it was always positive information about Rowan, but yeah, we hadn't gone back there for a football game or anything. I think my parents were pretty excited though when they brought me on the campus tour and they got to see it for the first time in a long time. And we went to a football game and they kind of followed the sports from afar, although this before, internet age. So it was a little harder to follow it. Now it's a lot easier to follow the football games. I'll just pop on to the website and see how those guys are doing. And the baseball team I follow quite a bit.
And so when you were here, you said you played football. What position?
Well, I was more like practice squad. I did play, I was the best tackling dummy on the, so I did carry the ball. I played running back. But yeah, I played 1 year of football and I enjoyed it a lot. And we were pretty good back then. We were like the Florida State of Division III.
You were under Coach Keeler.
Keeler was the man. He, I can't remember. I think it was his first year that he was the head coach because they were coming off the Division III championship Stag Bowl. The year before I got there, we went 6-3 when I was there. And then in that 6-year period, 1 year before and 1 year after I was there, that was 4 title games, I believe. I went down to Roanoke, Virginia and saw the Stag Bowl, I think twice, maybe 3 times.
So let's switch to the scholastic side then. So what did we study while we were here at Rowan?
Business.
Okay, business. And with the hope of doing what? Did you have something in mind that you wanted to sort of reach out to and start career-wise?
Yeah, well, I guess I didn't have a specific thing that I really wanted to get into. I said, yeah, business degree, you're, open to a lot of different things. So, that's what I chose. But yeah, I didn't have a specific job where I was like, this is what I need to do. So yeah, going in, I just decided to major in business.
What kinds of things were you involved in here on campus?
Sure, I was involved in Greek life. The Newman Center, religious, kind of youth group. Those are the 2 main things I was involved in.
So any professors or anything that were when you were here that kind of made an impact in your College of Business experience or any of your other kind of experiences on campus, any mentors that really helped you along your college journey?
Yeah, I would say the professors I remember the most, Dr. Farnelli in the science department. He was there. I remember my parents said, "Oh, we remember Dr. Farnelli from when we were there," because I think I was probably the tail end of his teaching career. Dr. Goodfellow, he was in an American Studies class. I don't remember the exact name of the class, but it just gave you awareness of society and how things, in the world were socially, which I thought gave me a good exposure to things that maybe I wasn't exposed to as much. So those 2 professors I always remember. But yeah, I mean, the business professors were great too, but those 2 just stick out in my mind right off the top of my head.
So now you take this diverse experience you have, and then what's sort of next for you post Rowan?
Yeah. So post Rowan, I worked in New Jersey for 3 years, financial services. So 401k plans, retirement things in terms of work. And I kind of got into triathlon, competed in triathlon quite a bit in those early years out of college.
Were you a runner and a biker and everything while you were playing football? How does one go from not triathloning to triathloning?
Yeah, I don't know. You just jump in the deep end and figure it out. But no, it started with running. So it's different certainly from football because you're sprinting in that sport. And then I just decided one day, I was like, well, let me do a little bit of long distance running or longer distance running. And I started doing that and I said, oh, I kind of like that. And I kind of was like, well, getting out of college, I need to figure out something else besides work to do for fun or a challenge. And then I signed up, did the Philadelphia Marathon November after graduating. I was sitting in my apartment in college and I see the Ironman triathlon, Hawaii Ironman triathlon come on TV on NBC, like they air it every year. And I'm sitting there, I'm just like, well, I need to find something to do after graduation. I see this, I had watched it before. I'm like, I wonder if I could do that. So I said, well, the first step was figure out how to run. So I was like, if I can't do a marathon, I can't do the rest of that. So I did the marathon and I said, okay, time to buy a bike. And then I'll figure out I kind of knew how to swim, but not really the right way. And then I kind of took some lessons on how to swim the correct way and then started riding a triathlon bike outside. And I was like, signed up for a triathlon, did a half Ironman triathlon. And then the next year I was like, well, why don't I try to do the full Ironman triathlon? So the next year I signed up, and second year after graduating, I did the Ironman triathlon up in Lake Placid, New York. So yeah, it was just kind of a challenge to see if I could do it,
We are wired differently, Jason, because I watch a lot of silly stuff on television, right? And if I tried any of that stuff, I'd be split in half.
Yeah. Well, you run.
I do run. But I don't have, my friends always want to get me to do a Tough Mudder.
Yeah.
And I told them, I was like, look, I have no interest in getting dirty, getting wet, any of that stuff. I just want to run. I want to stay on land. I'm just made for land.
You're made for land.
I am. That's where I am.
Do you feel like really, when you put your feet on the ground,
There's
you just feel
something about
very
it.
grounded?
But there
in
is,
the earth?
and Jason, you kind of share it. Like there's a runner's high that comes with it, right? You get sort of a, I don't know if you still do, but people don't understand the runner's high. But I get the runner's high. And then there is something like the mental and physical, the balance and or the dichotomy and the fight between the two of those that comes with a long distance run.
Actually, I think my mental state would fail and my physical state would fail if I had to do
we need
that.
one to not fail. Yeah. That's what happens with distance
I'm kind of
run.
hard-headed, so maybe I could do it, but I don't know.
It's trying to convince your left knee, like, I know you're hurting right now, but we still have another mile left.
So were you always kind of like adventurous in your, endeavors outside of work and academia?
I would say that was kind of I had backpacked in like Boy Scouts and things like that before in the outdoors, but I would say that was kind of the first step to be non-traditional sports, let's say, out of the team environment and just kind of choosing something on your own and figuring out how to do it. There was no, back then, I mean, now there's coaches and things like that. Back then it was kind of, triathlon started a bunch of years before I started, but you kind of had to figure it out yourself. There was no guiding force. I didn't know anybody else who ran, not anybody else who really swam as an adult. So you kind of just had to figure it out. You just got a book and said, all right, let's figure out how you train, how you swim, how you efficiently run and get in aerodynamic positions and things like that. So yeah, it was definitely kind of just taking it on my own and figuring it out. And like I say, the first time I ever saw another triathlete was the first race I ever did. So I was like, oh, these are what those people look like. So I don't know, just figured it out.
You're like, if they can do it, I can do it.
And then, so what do you move to next? Because it sounds like to me, if I'm going to diagnose a little bit. Let me put my doctor's hat on. Oh wait, doctors don't wear hats. It sounds like you're adventurous type here, and that I know that's going out on a limb, right? But it sounds like you got a little addictive personality here. That you're chasing these little highs here. Am I penning this to?
You said a little addictive personality. I'd say it's probably a lot.
All right, there you go. See, look, all those years of doctor school paid off. Yeah. So tell us about like sort of how you started to pursue some of these other adventures that you found.
Sure. So I worked for about 3 years in New Jersey. And then I said, I'm getting more into the outdoor stuff. I started reading books. Someone actually, a friend of mine who also went to Rowan, gave me a book, Into Thin Air. So it's about a disaster in '96 on Everest, or Chumulunga, if you wanted to say by the Nepalese name. And I read that, and oddly enough, lots of people pass away in the book, but why that would interest me in rock climbing or mountain climbing is interesting. But I kind of read this and I start reading other books, and obviously New Jersey is not really a hotbed for mountain climbing. I was doing triathlon. I see Boulder, Colorado is the hotbed of triathlon. All the triathletes, all the pros go and train there. So I'm seeing that in my magazines. I was like, oh, wait, but Boulder, Colorado also has some of the best rock climbing in the world right outside your doorstep. I'm like, oh man, that sounds like a place to be. So after reading all these mountain climbing books, I'm like, well, you know what? Why don't I try Colorado? Seems like my speed. And I should try it now or back then before you get too far into a career and things like that. I was like, let's do it now. If I like it, I'll stay. If I don't, then I could always move back. But I figured let's try it now and see if I'll like it. So quit my job, move out to Colorado. I don't know anybody.
They advise that, by the way. Professionals really advise that. Before you have another job, they always
quit and
career advice is always just quit.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, but the company I worked for didn't have an office in Colorado, so there was no choice there. So I said, you know what? I'm just quit, go and see what happens. And so move out here. So I already kind of read about climbing and slightly before I moved out here. So I took a 10,000 mile road trip around the country. So I said, I might as well see the rest of the country before, because how often do you get large blocks of time off from work? So since I already quit my job, might as well take advantage of that. So first went out all the way to Seattle and did a 2-week climbing course in the Cascades into Canada. And I figured I might as well learn to climb, might as well do it on a 2-week or 13-day course, figure out how to glacier travel, figure out how to rock climb, or at least get the introduction to it. So immerse myself in that, travel around the rest of the country, come back to New Jersey, go to one of my friends' weddings that I'm in. After that's over, move out to Colorado.
Wait, were your parents like, whoa, 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 you had a stable job and now you're going across the country to learn how to climb glaciers? What are you doing? What was that like?
Yeah, they were kind of like, whose kid are you? And where did you get these, sort of genes from, as far as just getting up and quitting and doing something else? Because it wasn't the standard for my family, at least. So yeah, they were, I mean, I told them a while before, I was like, I'm going to move out to Colorado. I think at first they were just like, yeah, sure. And then I was just like, all right, just letting you know, quitting the job in a month or two. And I'm going out there. So yeah, they were a bit nervous just because, it's kind of far off from anyone else in the family. And, I'm just brand new place, and climbing maybe is not the safest activity in the world that you're going to take up.
Yeah.
So yeah, they were, a little bit concerned, but I've done other things since then that probably made them more concerned.
And so then you head out west and you take up another addictive, I guess, physical activity or hobby, I guess we should say.
You don't have to keep referring to it as addictive.
Well, no, because
it feels triggering to me.
Well, because I'm triggered because I get the same way. Once you because that's how we started running, was the fact that we did our first race and then we were like, we have to run all the time. And then we started hiking this past year, and I'm putting myself into his shoes because the first year we went hiking out in Utah. And now what are we talking about for a trip? We're going back to Utah to hike again. Like, it just happens. So you go out there. Do you find a job eventually? Like, people are on pins and needles to find out if you're actually going to be productive citizens here. Like, what are we doing here for a job?
The crazy timing of it is 2 days before I moved to Colorado, I wake up and just, I don't have a job at that point. So I'm just packing my stuff up, and I turn on the television. I said, what's this on? So I remember in 1993, when I was in high school, we had the van gets driven into the bottom of the World Trade Center, and they set it off. So September 11th, 2001 is 2 days before I moved to Colorado. I turn on and I see these, after like 5 minutes, I realized, no, that's today. But 2 days later, I guess I moved to Colorado because I was already moving there, and I'm in the financial industry. So the financial industry shuts down. I mean, kind of all industries were really closed up at that point. So I moved out there, middle of September. It took me until about, I think, February 1st to actually start the first job. And I will tell you that it was an amazing time before I got that job, because I was outdoors every day learning to rock climb, kind of building on that experience, checking out everything, hiking and climbing and things like that. So it was an amazing time. I eventually had to get a job because I don't have a trust fund. My parents are educators, so the money was going to run out. So I did eventually get a job, but it wasn't by choice, because I was actually trying to find a job that entire time. But it was just, everything was just closed down as far as hiring. So it did take a while, but it was an amazing few months of being outside for sure.
Staying outside. Now let's go up in the air.
Yeah, you were reading lots of books about the air, it seems like. So what made you get interested in skydiving?
Triathlon, skydiving. Then I do triathlon again for a bunch of years. And so I'm working a lot of hours. Kind of just the endurance stuff kind of went away just because I was working so many hours. It's so hard to train. And I was like, I need to find something new to be passionate about and take my mind away from work. I need a release in some way. And the nice thing about skydiving is you don't have to really train for it. You just fall out of the plane. I mean, you do train in terms of skydiving, but there's no running. You just show up on a Saturday, door opens, you fall out and do whatever you want to do. Yeah, it's not like running or triathlon. So I had been tandem, so where an instructor is attached to you, years before, because I wanted to try it out and kind of put it in the back of my head because I was doing triathlon at the time. And I was riding my bike one day. I see this parachutes in the air because the airport's not that far from where I live. I was like, man, can I do that? Because there's a big difference in saying, oh, I can skydive versus like saying it, and versus like, okay, now put your money where your mouth is. Are you going to jump out of the plane? Can you deploy your parachute? Can you fix everything on the way down? Deal with your equipment, pack your parachute, all those kinds of things. And I said, well, let's see. So I signed up for the training course and see if I could skydive and see if I had the ability to keep calm and keep it under control and land safely on the ground.
And you're obviously doing tandem jumps when you start, right?
No. So the way it works, you can do a tandem. That's just kind of, people usually do it once, right? They just want to see what it's like. And someone does all the important stuff like pulling the parachute, landing it. You just kind of just strapped on. So the way it's called advanced freefall, AFF, you're jumping by yourself. And I'll qualify that. You're not attached to anybody, but the first jump, you'll have two instructors. they have their hands on your harness, your leg strap. So if you fall out of the plane early or screw up, you can get separated from them easily because they're not really attached to you. Their job is to make sure, one, that you're at first, when you have two instructors, that you pull your parachute and then it opens. But once your parachute goes, it rips you out of their hands and you're on your own. And they're down with walkie-talkies at the bottom, say, hey, make a right, make a left. You're way too far away. Come back to where you're supposed to land. And then as you progress, after you prove, I think it's like 3 jumps of proving that you're going to be okay. Then you go down to 1 instructor holding onto your harness. And then after 7 levels or whatever, you could jump on your own. And then, you figure it out from there. There's other training involved, but you get your license, and your license says you can jump on your own and you're responsible for yourself.
How often were you jumping out of airplanes? Every, instead of happy hour, you were just jumping out of a plane at night?
Rob, are you going to answer that for me?
Oh my gosh.
How often do you think?
Yeah, oh my gosh.
Wait, were you doing it more than one time a week?
Oh, I have a friend who does this. Go ahead.
So yeah, pretty much Saturdays and Sundays. So It's not like you don't go and just do 1 jump. You do, as you become more experienced, you do multiple jumps in a day. So yeah, that was the new hobby.
That's wild.
That's what, but he got addicted to it.
Yeah. But so what is the high, the anticipation of the jump, the free fall, the accomplishment when you're on the ground? What is the draw to, if you had to kind of narrow it down to one piece of the adventure, what would you say it was?
I don't know if I could draw it down to one piece because that's what keeps you coming back. But I would say at first it was the challenge to see if I could actually do it. And at first you get a really high amount of adrenaline. I mean, so much that your hands are shaking, but that kind of dissipates after a while. So if that was the only thing you're going after, then you would stop after, however many jumps to get that huge, the dump of adrenaline. So that you always will get adrenaline, but it's far lower as it goes. So as you get more experience, if you think when you fall that your adrenaline's super high, it doesn't. You actually calm down when you're going there. Your heartbeat will actually go lower as you relax in the air, because that craziness becomes your normal, which seems weird for people who don't jump, because you're like, aren't you just freaking out the whole time? And it's like, sometimes if something goes wrong, you might be, you're going to get elevated heartbeat. But if everything's going right, you actually get into a more relaxed state. And you're in the moment, which I thought is the most beautiful thing. There's no future, there's no past. You don't care what your 401k is doing or what the stock market's doing. You're totally in the moment. And that's a really special thing. And it took me a long time to realize that things I would choose were all in the moment. I didn't realize that's why I was choosing them at the time, because I wasn't consciously choosing it. It's kind of like triathlon. You're in the moment as well. Skydiving, even more so. Yeah, all those activities, rock climbing, same thing. You're in the moment, and you're just totally zoned in on what you're doing, and that's just, it's certainly an awesome feeling. But yeah, there's accomplishments as well. Like, can I do these maneuvers in the air? Wingsuiting. Am I flying with someone else in conjunction to do certain moves? That can be satisfying. It's kind of like being in it's like a tribe. It's like, you have a bond with people that you maybe ordinarily wouldn't, and you're all walks of life, and you're coming in and you're having a great time. So it's a satisfying, and you learn a lot about yourself. What happens when something goes wrong, your parachute malfunctions. Are you doing the emergency procedures to save your life?
If that involves crying, yes. Crying is part of the procedure.
There's no crying in skydiving. You're about to hit the ground and you're going to die. You figure it out real quick. Or you won't have to figure it out anymore, because you're just going to be on the ground.
How prepared do you feel if something were about to go wrong? Do you feel pretty confident when you're jumping, or you said you're in the moment? Did you feel prepared if something were to go wrong in the air?
Well, so you never know when something randomly is going to go wrong with your parachute malfunction or something like that. So what you do is you always practice what they call EPs, or emergency procedures. So you're always practicing that before you get in the plane. So there's certain handles you pull to release your main parachute, pull the reserve parachute, things like that. So you're always touching, and I'm touching where these would be if I had my parachute on. So you're always preparing to do it. So you kind of do it without having to think, like, oh, which do I pull first, or how do I do this? So you're trying to get it in your mind, so your default to what to do, the right thing when something goes wrong. So you're not. Are you ever really prepared? Well, you figure it out when it happens the first time, really. Did you do it right? And did you fix what it needs to do? So it's always a shock when it happens the first time, I guess. But then, if things have happened once or twice, you're kind of like, oh, I know what's going wrong and let's fix it. So
I know a segue when I see one, and I want to use this opportunity. So Jason, obviously one of the things about your story is something did go wrong. Can you tell us sort of about that day and what happened? And
yeah, so it was a jump 327 if if you're counting at home. I'm coming in for a landing 150 feet off the ground. Huge wind comes off the mountains. So usually when you land a parachute, you try to land into the wind, like a slight wind, let's say like a 4 or 5 mile an hour wind that slows you down, gives you a nice little landing. So I'm heading into the wind, parachutes overhead, everything looks great. I'm landing like normal on a grass field like I landed on hundreds of times before. Then all of a sudden, huge gust of wind comes off the mountains at my back. So the opposite way as it was blowing, huge gust hits me, and it like picked me up in my harness and just slammed me. So I go from, going the speed that you normally land at to, there's a fence coming up and there's an airplane hangar. And my speed increased greatly from what I was before the gust of wind. So you're kind of disoriented when I get hit so hard, because I never got hit. I've gotten hit with wind in the back, but not at that speed. It was like a huge gust. So 150 feet is about 5 seconds before you're going to land with the kind of parachute I had. So it's really not very much time. And as I'm coming in, I'm counting down a second. So, the first thing you say, well, why don't you turn away from where the fence is and the airplane hangar? But you can't do that at 150 feet off the ground, because the way a parachute turns is you pull a handle that slightly collapses the side of the parachute. Your parachute dives towards the ground, and that's what creates a turn. So if you're at 2,000 feet, well, if you lose 150 or 200 feet and then your turn stops and your parachute stabilizes, well, then that's fine. But when you're 150 feet and I tried to turn, I would have dove directly into the ground, which meant increased speed. Well, the ground's not going to move, so I probably would have died. So you basically just had to go, okay, I'm not going to turn because I know what's going to happen if I turn. Take a deep breath, and hopefully you land before that fence, but you're not really sure. And I'm like, okay, whatever's going to happen is going to happen. So I'm counting down those 5 seconds, and I'm like 3, I'm like, maybe I'll land before the fence. 2, and then I'm 1, I'm like, there's no way I'm landing before that fence. Like there's way too much speed on this parachute. I'm ripping through the fence. So I hit the fence. It's like a wire cattle fence. So the 2 top strands hit me here and here, chest. As soon as I hit it, basically, because I'm going like 30 miles an hour, it just rips in half, like wow. Boom. It goes tight and then rips. And then 10 feet behind it's the airplane hangar, which is just a building. And so it's almost instantaneous. I go through the fence, hit the building, and I black out from the injuries. So I'm laying on the ground. This is what I found out this months later, but first person on the scene, because there's like a tent where they're packing their parachutes, the other skydivers. First guy comes over to me. Lucky he is an EMS guy. He starts talking to me, and the first thing apparently I said was, don't call anybody. I'll be okay. Just give me a minute. Now, I was destroyed because I hit that building going 30 miles an hour. He knew I was destroyed, but I was blacked out when I said it. But it was almost like an indication that I was fighting. I was just like trying to get up and trying to, not physically getting up because that wasn't possible, but like I was already, the survival mode had kicked in.
Sure, yeah.
So they call 911. They flight for life me to the nearest level 1 trauma center, which is like 50 miles away. There was a short stop at another hospital, but sort of for life-saving surgery, because I hit so hard on my left side. So 10 of my 12 ribs break. They impact my heart so hard. My heart shoots out of where it normally sits, called the pericardial sac, ends up on the right side of my chest, all twisted up.
I wish the audience could see my eyeballs because they are just like what? So big. What? They're like that emoji that's like so big. Okay. Okay, go ahead. Yeah. Your heart is on the other side. Go ahead.
Yeah. So they get me to level 1 trauma center, directly into life-saving surgery. Doctors later say that not only that doctor, but no doctor at this level 1 trauma center, which is basically hospitals for the worst of the worst. They take the helicopter rides of bad car accidents. Something bad happens, they fly them there. That no one had ever performed the surgery they performed on my heart before, it was a pericardial tear is what happened, which is like the sac your heart normally sits in, it shoots out of there. So no one had ever performed that surgery on anyone before, because they basically said no one ever makes it alive because your heart disconnects, I guess, from whatever important things it disconnects from. So the doctor's just like, tells my family, like, there's no way he should be alive. He should have never made it off the field alive, let alone in the helicopter ride to this hospital, let alone the surgery. Besides that, I have 20 broken bones, 4 organs had to be fixed, like collapsed lungs, spleens lacerated, colon had to be put back into place. The left femur gets broken. I have a rod that goes basically from my knee all the way up to my hip for the most part. Pelvis is broken in the front and back, broken wrist, broken elbow, and dislocated L5 vertebrae fracture. What else am I missing out? 11 broken ribs, concussion. So yeah, long list of injuries. So I'm in a coma for 8 days. So they fixed my heart. They don't even close it up.
Was it a medically induced coma because you had so much injuries?
Yeah.
Or okay.
So yeah, they don't even close up my chest for 3 days because if they need to go back in and fix my heart again, they don't want to have to cut open all the wiring and all this other stuff. So after 3 days, they figure, hey, the heart surgery worked, and they multiple surgeries to fix everything else after that.
Wait a second. They're just okay. So I have watched a lot of Grey's Anatomy, but they just left you open. How does that work? What do they like tape you up or cover you up? I mean, you were in a medically induced coma, so maybe you don't know the answer to that. But
so my parents are on the East Coast. So they fly out there as soon as they can. But the first person I see is my emergency contact, my friend Lori. So she gets the call. She freaks out. It's like, she knew, you don't ever think this is actually going to happen. So she shows at the hospital. Later on, she tells me, so she's sitting in my room, and the nurse comes in at some point and says, do you want to see his internal organs? Because apparently they have medical.
Is that a HIPAA violation?
As my friend tells me, medical grade saran wrap on my body, because I have a scar from here, top of my chest, all the way to my belt line where they opened me up to fix everything. So she's like, no, I do not want to see that. So I don't know if they put like 2 wires in to hold it together. I don't know the answer to that, but they basically didn't completely close me up. And as my friend's sitting there, so the first day after surgery, right, I'm in a coma, I'm laying there. And so she's freaked out. She could barely walk to my room. She has to get her sister to drive her to the hospital. She gets met by the chaplain, and she thinks I died from the time she gets the call to come to the hospital.
Right.
No. And spoiler alert, by the way, Jason lives through this.
Yeah,
I don't want to ruin I don't want to bury the lead.
In the ending.
Yeah.
And so she shows up. She goes, no, he's not dead, but I need to prepare you for what you're about to see because it's horrible what you're about to see. So she's sitting in my room. The doctor comes in who saved me the night before, and he starts staring at me. And as my friend would describe months later, she goes, he was staring at you for such a long time, I started getting scared that something was wrong. She goes, finally, I built up the courage to say, why are you staring at him? Like, is something about to go wrong? And the doctor turns to her and says, I'm staring at him because I can't believe he's alive. I was like, there's no way this guy should live through anything like this. I was like, no one lives through this. And that's kind of starts the story of the comeback. So I start 8 days in a coma. I wake up. So I open my eyes for the first time after they, whatever they do to get you out of the coma, I guess, cut down on the drugs. So I see the sunlight coming through my room, and I open my eyes. So my eyes have to adjust because it was dark for 8 days. And there's somebody guy standing over me who turns out to be the doctor who saved my life. He's checking on me. He's looking down at me, and he just goes, you're lucky to be alive.
Did you have any memory of what happened?
Well, so the memory of the actual what happened up to the crash, I 100% remember. I knew exactly what happened. And I do remember, like, after that blacking out, I remember rotor blades when the helicopter was flying me to the hospital. But when I woke up, I didn't know what was wrong with me because I pretty much blacked out when I hit the building. So I looked at myself and I see like bandages down here. I see machines are encircling my bed. There's like 5 or 6 IV bags hanging up. There's tubes coming out of my chest, all draining blood. There's like, I don't know how many there were, more than I could count. I couldn't count that high at that point. I think I had a lot of medication on me. There's casts, and the nurse comes in and just like, can you please not move? And I look at her, I'm just like, that seemed obvious to me, even in my, crazy state. And I couldn't even feel my body. I was completely numb. And I'm like, okay, I won't move. So yeah, that's kind of the crazy wake up story. And then there's 10 weeks where I can't move because I can't put any weight on my legs because, they're scared of the pelvis. Obviously, it's broken in the front and back. There's all kind of metal in the pelvis and the broken leg. And then, you have the chest wired shut and all that. So you can't move for 10 weeks.
But for 10 weeks though, you're now awake. Like, that you're like, you've come out of this coma, and now you're just knowing that you're stationary. You're not moving.
Which for somebody like you, who's a thrill seeker, that must have been really hard to be like, I mean, listen, not that maybe you could have run a triathlon right then, but that must have been really hard for you to kind of just sit there.
Yeah. I'd say the hardest part of my life was laying there, but it was the biggest blessing there was. Here's why. Because I mean, besides work, so I was working way too many hours before that accident, right? I wasn't really happy. It was 12 to 14 hours a day, project to project. And skydiving was really an escape. So I didn't have the being in the moment was not having to think of the work and the stress and everything else that's going on. So I really wasn't happy going into that. And even before that, I was living life at 100 miles an hour. I mean, in terms of like whether it was skydiving, climbing, and doing all those things, I was in the moment guy. It was just one thing after another after another. I didn't spend enough time with people that I cared about because it was always the next task and the next thing I was trying to do. So laying in that bed took away, took away the defense mechanisms of avoidance of out there running and get an endurance high, or skydiving and not having to think of things. It made me lay there and think of everything in life. So I would say I never thought of anything positive that happened, because I had a lot of great things that happened in my life, but I never thought about any of that. I always thought about all the things that I didn't do right, that I didn't tell friends and family that I loved them enough. I didn't spend enough time with them, and I was sidetracked with all that work and other things, just getting through life. And you sort of put other things on the back burner that you should have never done. And when you're laying there and all you can do is think about those things you wish you had done, you start reassessing your life and you go, man, I just got a second chance at life. I shouldn't be alive. And like, what do you do with this? Well, you try to get better at those weaknesses. It's like, thing I was most proud of was like, I could get through anything in life with effort and getting through things, whether it was some crazy mountain adventure or skydiving or whatever else. But there is a dark side to that same personality trait that I thought so highly of before. The dark side is you're always moving at 100 miles an hour. You can get through these things in life, but you missed out on all these other things in life because you were so obsessed with getting through these other things that you missed out. So I thought about all that dark side of those things and how you have to control. There's a good part of that of getting through anything, but then there's the bad part that you missed out. And you go, well, how do I change that going forward? So that 10 weeks. So I would say the emotional downside was far harder than the physical challenges. Now, the physical challenges were awful. I mean, I was screaming in pain. It was horrible, but the emotional was harder than that.
But so we did the physical side, which is great. I mean, that's the awesome side. So just kind of go full circle on this whole journey. What about the mental side? Like what were the things? Because obviously
this is trauma.
Yes, a whole trauma situation, but you said you came away from it now a different person, which kind of inspired you to write your book and such. What were some of the life lessons? Or, I mean, you almost bit it. So what happened? Like, what did you? I don't know. Geez. Well, what are you taking away from this? Like, what do you share with others in your speaking engagements that you do? Because you do this now on the road and take your story elsewhere. Yep. But what did you learn? Because I'm kind of curious, because you mentioned yourself, you had to spend a lot of time. Jason had to spend a lot of time with Jason. So what did you change about yourself?
Because you started running.
Yeah, I mean, you obviously went right back to what you were doing. So I'm hoping the mental side of things, you grew some.
I would say the way I would process things, for instance, like before the accident, right? Go for a long run, I'm triathlon training, something like that. I'm thinking about people that I care about, right? And I'm almost like processing myself and not ever communicating that to the person. So I realized when I woke up, I was like, a lot of people, not saying I didn't ever say I love you to, people are important, but I was like, I kept it to myself. I'm just like, expressing yourself to those people you care about is tremendously important. I could have died and they wouldn't have known exactly how I felt about them, or maybe not enough, and had to wonder. And it's expressing also the vulnerable side of yourself. It was always in terms of, growing up, it's like, you need to get through things, and you don't complain about whatever you're going through. You just get through it. And learning to be comfortable with expressing how you feel about things you struggle with, because the reality is you help other people when you're willing to be vulnerable about yourself with other people. It opens up a connection to them that they'll share with you something they're not feeling great about. And I learned that in the hospital, because when I was laying in that bed for those 10 weeks, so every time someone came into my room that was new, they would see my medical chart and they, want to hear the story. And what I realized as time went on, that every time I shared that story, they would share something about themselves. It kind of opened up the trust factor that they might not have necessarily had, because I was willing to be vulnerable with about the things I struggle with first. And I was just like, there's something to that I need to take advantage of, because I was like, you find new purpose, because I felt like I was working too many hours and I lost purpose in life. And it kind of dawned on me, I was like, wait a minute, this might be the purpose that I'm supposed to learn out of this, that maybe I have to go through the toughest thing in my own life and come back from it before I ever could help someone else going through the toughest thing or very tough thing in their own life.
You've written a book about your experience. I would say you are a motivational, inspirational speaker. Is this what you're doing professionally now? And also, do you think being able to share your story with so many folks and be vulnerable is part of your personal healing process from your experience?
Yeah, I definitely think it's certainly part of a healing process myself to talk about it. So kind of COVID happened and I started speaking right after kind of COVID started opening up. So I've been doing it for, 15, 16 months of actually speaking in public on this, and book signings and things like that, where I share it. And then, also people that I know are just people, refer friends to me that are going through, surgeries and things like that, I'm lucky to be able to, come my way to kind of help them and counsel them through what they're going through. And you meet amazing people at book signings when you talk about your story, and they like I said, put it out there that are vulnerable, and these amazing people start pouring out their stories. And I just met a person 2 weeks ago that was just about to start cancer chemo the following Monday, and she didn't even know I was there. She just showed up at the bookstore and started talking to me. And another person that was grieving their parents' death, and we had a long conversation about what they were going through. And the gift to me was the story, because it's a way to connect to people, and then it goes far deeper than just the story. It's like the shock value of the skydiving accident, I realize, pulls people in, but then you realize there's far more to it than the skydiving accident, because it wasn't just like I just hit. There was an evolution of me as a person and what you go through, and sharing that part of it is really the most important part of the story, not the skydiving portion.
Yeah, that the physical part was it was what it was, but there was so much more that came from that.
The $100 million question: are you able to skydive again? And
do you want to?
Would you want to?
Well, so when I was laying in that bed, not able to move, my family was like, "Can you please not skydive again?" They were nervous beforehand, but like I can't imagine what even worse that would feel if they were like, "Oh, Jason's going skydiving today. Like, is he going to smash into another building?" So there's a lot of other challenges in life, and that was a part of my life. That wasn't my whole life, and it's I like to say it's a period of my life. Do I ever hear that plane flying overhead and go, "Man, I wish it was in that"? Sometimes I yes.
We are so glad that you've recovered and you are in great spirits. And on a personal level, as a mom myself of very young boys, but I just hope that you continue to take care of yourself and your mental health, because what you went through is quite an ordeal. But tell folks where they can find more information out about your story and your book. We don't want to lose the opportunity to share about where people can learn more.
So my website's jasondennen.com, spelled Dennen. Instagram, just JWD Boulder, not spelled like the city, BOULDER. You can get my book on my website. If you get it on my website, I'm happy to sign it. Personal message to you, my signature. You also get it on Amazon. You also get it barnesandnoble.com. And then also one of the things coming up, I also speak, obviously you can contact me for that. I have a holiday coming up. It's called Coming Back to Life Day, where I celebrate the day that I almost passed away and lived. So this year, when I celebrate every year by doing something one of the doctors said I wouldn't be able to do. So this year is the first year I'm back doing technical climbing. So Mount Ypsilon in Rocky Mountain National Park, there's an ice couloir called the Y couloir that it'll be the first time going back technical climbing with crampons, ice axes, all those things. So that's the goal this year, to stand on top of that peak on coming back to Life Day and celebrating another year of being alive and surviving and thriving afterwards. So
wow. Well, we celebrate you, and we will be there climbing only in spirit.
I'll think about you on the summit. How about that?
Okay, that'd be great. That'd be great. Jason, thanks so much for joining us. Thank you for sharing your very vulnerable story. I think there's purpose to that, and we're so proud to have an alum like you representing us in Colorado.
Thank you for having me on. I greatly appreciate it.
Well, I can say after that you're probably never going to let your two kids, Leo and Noah, out of the house. Like, you, as a mom, you're never going to, like, if they ever want to go.
I got to tell you, it's hard to send kids to school when you're a parent. It's hard to let them out of your sight. You have to, though.
I know, but God forbid they want to go up in the air or go climb. You're not going to let them do anything.
Leo will absolutely not want to do that. Noah, he might do it now if we allow it. he's quite interesting.
You're going to say to Brian, where is he? Oh, he's on the Rockies.
Yeah,
okay,
exactly. Great. But Rob, actually, it's funny that I thought about you a lot as we were wrapping up this conversation with Jason, because he talked a lot about, little known fact, I've known Rob for, how long have we known each other? I was in, oh gosh, we've been, I don't know, 15, 20 years maybe.
It's up there now, yeah.
So it took me like almost 15 years to know a lot about Rob's personal life. So yeah. Rob is a great person that, unlike Jason said, you're not vulnerable. Wait. You don't share, but people share.
Did he say I wasn't nice and I missed it in the interview?
No, but you don't share a lot about your personal life to others.
Yes,
yet.
That's correct.
What the interesting piece about you is everybody comes to you and tells you things. How does that work?
Well, it's the doctor side that I disclosed in the interview. No, I don't know how I don't know what it is. It's just how I'm wired.
I know.
It's just who I am.
There's something about you that people feel comfortable with, yet we know nothing of you.
I know. I did hear myself a little bit in his story, in the fact that you're doing 100 miles an hour, and my mom keeps telling me you got to slow down. You got to slow. I get it. But that's just kind of what I do.
Well, you know what? Maybe this is a good learning opportunity for you, for all of us, to kind of slow down, take it easy, don't miss things, and don't miss the opportunity to tell people that you're grateful for them, or that you love them, or I love you, Rob Life.
Oh, we love you right back there, Jessica Rose.
Have a great day, folks.
You've been listening to Beyond the Brown and Gold on Rowan Radio 89.7 WGLS FM. You can find more episodes on your favorite podcasting platforms by searching for Beyond the Brown and Gold or Rowan Radio On Demand.